Your soulmate is already married. But they still can't forget you. They sent you a secret love letter. Don't scroll, because the letter your soulmate never thought they would write is carrying a truth they have been trying to bury for far longer than anyone around them knows. My beloved child, this message is for you, and your heart needs this right now because you may have spent so much time convincing yourself that whatever existed between you had to be forgotten the moment their life took a different direction. They are married now. There are commitments, responsibilities, promises, and real people whose feelings matter. And yet, somewhere beneath the life they are living, there is still an unfinished emotional chapter connected to you. Listen to this carefully. That does not mean you are being called to interfere with their marriage, chase them, or become someone's hidden relationship. But it may explain why this connection has felt so difficult for either of you to completely erase. Your soulmate has been remembering things they thought time would soften, and eventually those memories became so strong that they sat down and wrote words they had never been brave enough to say aloud. Wait, because the first line of that secret love letter was not, "Come back to me." It was something much more vulnerable. They wrote that they were sorry. My beloved child, they were not only apologizing for distance. They were apologizing for leaving you with questions they never answered. They admitted that there were moments when they knew you deserved clarity, but they stayed silent because they were terrified that honesty would complicate everything. They may have believed that time would eventually answer for them. They may have assumed you would move on, they would move on, and whatever remained unfinished would simply disappear. But don't scroll, because years, months, or distance did not completely silence what they never resolved. The letter became the place where they finally admitted, "I never forgot what you meant to me." Listen closely, because what they wrote next may be the part that hurts the most. Your soulmate admitted that they thought about you during moments when they were supposed to feel completely certain about the path they had chosen. Not necessarily because they wanted to betray anyone, but because memories do not ask permission before appearing. Maybe they remembered your voice during a quiet drive. Maybe they heard a song that instantly carried them back to a moment with you. Maybe they saw someone laugh the way you did, and for 1 second their heart went somewhere they had told themselves it was no longer allowed to go. My beloved child, this is where emotional truth becomes complicated. A person can honor commitments and still acknowledge that something from their past was never emotionally finished. What matters is what they choose to do with that truth. Your heart needs this right now, because the letter may have confessed something you once desperately wanted to hear. They wrote that you were never insignificant. Maybe you thought their decision to marry someone else proved you had imagined the depth between you. Maybe you compared yourself to the person they chose and wondered what you lacked. Don't look away, because their letter says something different. They may have chosen another path because of timing, fear, circumstance, family pressure, emotional readiness, or simply because life moved in a direction neither of you fully controlled. But none of those things automatically erase the emotional impact you had on them. My beloved child, you did not become less valuable because they built a life elsewhere. Pause here, because there was one sentence in the letter they wrote and erased several times before finally leaving it there. It said, "Sometimes I wonder what our life would have looked like if I had been brave when I had the chance." Listen to this. That sentence is not a promise. It is regret. There is a difference. Your soulmate is not necessarily saying their current marriage should never have happened. They are acknowledging that there is an alternate future they sometimes imagine because your connection ended with unanswered questions. Don't scroll, because unresolved love often creates what-if stories, and your soulmate is finally recognizing how much energy those stories still carry. Stay with this message, because the next part of the letter revealed how clearly they remember the small things. My beloved child, they did not write only about dramatic moments. They remembered details. A conversation that lasted longer than either of you planned. Something you said when they were having a difficult day. The way you noticed when they were pretending to be fine. The way you made them feel seen without demanding that they perform. Maybe they remembered the exact expression on your face when you laughed. Maybe they remembered a place, a scent, a song, or a simple ordinary moment that became emotionally important only after it was gone. Don't scroll, because those are often the memories people carry longest, the ones nobody else would understand. Listen carefully, because your soulmate may have admitted that getting married did not magically erase those memories. They may have believed commitment to another person would close the emotional door automatically. But hearts are not light switches. My beloved child, this is not permission for betrayal, it is simply recognition that emotional history can remain even when life changes. Their challenge now is to honor the life they have chosen while honestly understanding what remains unresolved inside them. And your challenge is not to become the secret place they escape into. Your peace matters too. Don't scroll, because the letter may have included a line that shocked even them after they wrote it. You still feel like the person who knew me before I learned how to hide so much. My beloved child, maybe that is why forgetting you has been so difficult. Perhaps you knew a version of them that existed before responsibility, fear, and life hardened certain parts of their heart. Maybe they felt freer with you. Maybe you saw dreams they stopped talking about later. You could represent not only lost love, but a lost version of themselves. That can make a memory incredibly powerful. Your heart needs this right now, because you may have been seeing 111, 222, for 44, or 555 during moments when this person unexpectedly crosses your mind. If 111 appears, let it remind you to become conscious of the future you are creating for yourself. If 222 shows up, think about balance and healthy partnership. If 444 catches your eye, remember that stable love requires honesty and a strong foundation. And if 555 keeps appearing, allow it to symbolize change rather than assuming it guarantees reunion. My beloved child, signs can be meaningful reflections, but they should never become reasons to cross boundaries or put your life on hold. Wait, because the most emotional part of the letter may have been where they admitted why they never contacted you sooner. Your soulmate was afraid of what opening that door might do. They knew that if they reached out carelessly, it could hurt you, confuse them, and disrespect commitments already made. So instead, they wrote words they may never have intended to send. Don't look away, because perhaps the secret love letter began as something private. A way to finally tell the truth without acting on it. But then something changed. Maybe they felt you deserved to know that you were never forgotten. Maybe the weight of carrying it became too heavy. Listen closely, because if that letter ever reaches you, what matters most is not how romantic it sounds. What matters is whether it respects reality. My beloved child, someone can say, I still love a part of you, while also saying, I will not ask you to become a secret. That distinction matters. You deserve a love that can stand openly in the light, not one that survives only through hidden messages and stolen moments. If your soulmate is married, any future change in their life has to be handled honestly, independently, and responsibly before they ask you for anything romantic. Don't scroll, because your soulmate may understand that more deeply than you think. In the letter, they may have written, I don't expect anything from you. That sentence matters. They know their confession does not give them a right to your heart. They know you may have healed. You may be with someone else. You may no longer want the future you once imagined. My beloved child, real honesty has to leave room for your freedom. Stay with this message, because your soulmate also admitted something difficult about the person they became after losing you. They may have become more guarded, more practical. Maybe they stopped believing in certain kinds of connection. Perhaps their current life is stable, but stability never answered the emotional question of why you affected them so deeply. Don't scroll, because the letter may have become their attempt to understand that question without rewriting their entire life. Your heart needs this right now, because you are allowed to recognize that a connection was meaningful without making it your destiny to rescue it. My beloved child, this is part of your spiritual awakening too. There was a time when hearing, I still think about you, might have been enough to make you abandon every boundary. But you are becoming wiser now. You understand that feelings matter, but circumstances matter. Commitments matter. Integrity matters. You can hold compassion for someone's unresolved emotions without becoming responsible for fixing them. Listen to this, because there may be one sentence in the letter that brings everything back to you. I hope you found the kind of love I was too afraid to give you. Don't scroll. That may be the most painful line of all because it carries acceptance. Your soulmate may finally understand that while they spent years thinking about what might have been, you deserve to keep living. You deserved someone willing to choose you openly. You deserved consistency. Pause here, because your soulmate may have written your name at the top of the letter and stared at it for a long time before continuing. My beloved child, sometimes a name can hold an entire history. Every unfinished conversation. Every almost confession. Every moment when timing felt wrong. Every goodbye that did not feel complete. And perhaps that is why this letter feels so heavy to them. They are not only writing to you. They are writing to the life they never had with you. Don't look away, because the letter may also reveal that they have dreamed about you. Not necessarily as some supernatural prediction, but as the mind returning to unresolved emotion. Maybe in one dream you were walking away. Maybe in another you were sitting across from them and asking the question they never answered in real life, why didn't you tell me? My beloved child, waking from those dreams may have forced them to confront how much truth was still buried. Listen carefully, because this is where 222 may become symbolic again. Two paths. Two people. Two lives that once almost came together but moved in different directions. The spiritual lesson is not always reunion. Sometimes it is truth. Sometimes it is forgiveness. Sometimes it is releasing the fantasy so that both people can become honest about reality. If 444 appears, let it bring you back to stability. If 555 appears, remember that change must happen cleanly, not through secret emotional chaos. Your heart needs this right now, because your soulmate's marriage makes this situation different from an ordinary reconciliation story. My beloved child, nobody needs to become the villain for unresolved feelings to exist. Their spouse is a real person. Their commitments are real. Your feelings are real too. And the healthiest path is one where nobody is deceived. If your soulmate is unhappy in their marriage, that is something they must address honestly because of the marriage itself, not use you as a hidden exit. Don't scroll, because the letter may actually say something similar. They may have written, "I am not asking you to wait for me." Listen to that carefully. Maybe this is the first time they are loving you without asking you to sacrifice yourself. Maybe their confession is less about pulling you back and more about finally giving you the truth they withheld. My beloved child, sometimes an honest goodbye can contain love too. Stay with this message, because you may wonder why they would send a letter at all if they are not asking for a relationship. Perhaps because they realized you spent too long believing you meant nothing. Maybe they wanted you to stop carrying that wound. Maybe they wanted you to understand that their silence was not the whole truth. Don't scroll, because clarity can sometimes heal even when it does not reopen a door. Listen to this, because the next part of the letter may say, "I remember the day I realized I loved you." My beloved child, they may describe something ordinary. You were sitting somewhere together. You said something kind. You looked at them in a way that made them feel understood. And in that moment, they imagined losing you. And realized the thought hurt too much. But instead of confessing, they became afraid. That fear may have shaped everything that followed. Wait, because your soulmate may admit they made the opposite choice from what their heart wanted because it seemed safer. Maybe they chose certainty over intensity. Maybe they chose a path approved by people around them. Perhaps they believed they would grow into forgetting you. My beloved child, don't scroll, because their confession does not necessarily mean they regret every part of the life they built. Human emotions can hold contradictions. They can value their present and still grieve something unfinished from the past. Your heart needs this right now, because you do not have to become trapped inside those contradictions with them. You can hear the truth and still say, "I wish you well." You can feel emotion and still maintain distance. You can forgive the past without creating a secret future. My beloved child, spiritual maturity is sometimes the ability to feel deeply without allowing every feeling to become an action. Don't look away, because there is one final paragraph of the letter that your soulmate may have struggled to finish. They wrote that if life had unfolded differently, they believe they would have chosen you more bravely. But they also wrote that they cannot ask you to live inside a hypothetical future. Listen closely. That is where love becomes less possessive and more honest. Pause here, because the most powerful thing you can do with a message like this is not immediately ask, "When will they leave?" Ask instead, "What does this truth change for me?" Maybe it gives you closure. Maybe it confirms that your connection was real to both of you. Maybe it helps you release the belief that you were easily forgotten. My beloved child, you are still free to build a life that does not depend on someone else changing theirs. Don't scroll, because your soulmate may have ended the letter with words they never expected to write. I hope if I ever see you again, I can look you in the eyes knowing I finally told you the truth. There is longing in that sentence, but there is also restraint. Your heart needs this right now because sometimes the most loving thing someone can do is stop asking another person to carry what they themselves failed to resolve. Listen carefully, because there is one detail about this letter that may change how you understand everything. Your soulmate may not have written it recently. They may have started it much earlier, possibly around the time they were preparing to make the commitment that changed their life. Maybe the first version was never sent. Maybe they kept it hidden, returned to it over time, added sentences, erased others, and carried it like a secret conversation with you that never happened. Don't leave this message yet, because that means the truth may go back farther than you imagined. My beloved child, there may have been a moment before their marriage when they nearly reached out to you, nearly asked whether there was still something worth fighting for, and then stopped themselves. Something happened around that moment. A conversation, pressure from someone close to them, or a fear they never explained, that convinced them to remain silent and continue down another path. Listen to this final revelation carefully, because that hidden moment is the part of the letter they are most afraid for you to read. Your soulmate may admit that before they made one of the biggest commitments of their life, your name was still in their heart, and there was one question they desperately wanted to ask you but never found the courage to say. My beloved child, the secret letter does not only reveal that they still remember you. It reveals that there may have been one final opportunity when both of your futures could have looked completely different. And what stopped them from taking that chance is the truth they have never told anyone. Don't scroll, because the question your soulmate almost asked you before their marriage is still sitting inside them like a door they never opened. My beloved child, this is the part they have carried quietly for far longer than anyone around them realizes. Before they made the commitment that changed the direction of their life, there was a moment when they almost reached toward you. Maybe they had your name open on their phone. Maybe they started writing something and erased it. Maybe they sat alone wondering whether they should ask one simple question: if I came toward you honestly, would you still choose me? Listen to this, because your heart needs this right now. They wanted an answer, but fear convinced them that asking was too dangerous. If you said no, their heart would break. If you said yes, everything they were preparing to do might have changed. So instead of facing either possibility, they chose silence. And silence eventually became a decision of its own. Wait, because something happened around that moment that pushed them even further away from contacting you. My beloved child, someone may have told them that reopening the connection would only create chaos. Maybe a family member reminded them of expectations. Maybe a friend said, "You need to move forward." Perhaps circumstances around their life made staying on the planned path feel safer than risking everything for a conversation whose outcome they could not control. Don't scroll, because what they did next was not necessarily proof that they stopped caring. They may have simply chosen the path that required the least immediate confrontation with their emotions. And now, looking back, they realize that avoiding one difficult conversation did not erase the question. It only carried that question into the life they built afterward. Listen closely, because this is why the letter became so important to them. They could not go back in time, but they could finally write the words they were too frightened to say then. My beloved child, the letter may contain something like, should have asked you. I should have given us one honest conversation before I let life decide everything for me. They may admit that for years they told themselves there was no point looking backward, yet part of them always wondered whether the ending was real or simply unfinished. Your heart needs this right now because unresolved endings can remain emotionally powerful precisely because nobody ever said the final truth. Don't look away, because the next confession in that letter may be even harder to read. Your soulmate may admit that there were moments after getting married when they caught themselves imagining how different life would feel if they had chosen courage instead of certainty. This does not automatically mean they despise their present life or regret every choice they made. Human emotions can be complicated. My beloved child, someone can respect a commitment and still grieve a path never taken. They can care about the people in their present and still recognize that something from the past was never emotionally complete. What matters is whether they handle that truth with integrity. Pause here, because your soulmate may have realized that remembering you became strongest during ordinary moments, not dramatic ones. Maybe they were grocery shopping and remembered something you used to joke about. Maybe they drove past a place that belonged to an old memory. Maybe they had good news and instinctively thought, they would understand why this matters. Don't scroll, because those small flashes are what made forgetting you so difficult. You were not only connected to romance in their mind. You were connected to familiarity, emotional understanding, and a version of themselves they still recognize when your memory appears. Your heart needs this right now, because the letter may say that they never wanted you to believe you were easy to replace. Maybe you watched them marry someone else and assumed that was exactly what happened. Maybe you told yourself, they found what they wanted, and it wasn't me. My beloved child, that belief may have wounded you deeply. But listen to this, choosing a different life path does not automatically mean another person erased everything that came before. Your soulmate may now be trying to give you the truth they withheld, not to pull you into a secret romance, but to release you from the belief that you meant nothing. Stay with this message, because one paragraph of the letter may begin with an apology for something very specific. They may say, I'm sorry I let you think you were the only one who felt it. My beloved child, imagine the weight of those words. For so long, you may have carried the connection like a private burden. You wondered whether you had exaggerated it in your mind. You wondered why someone who seemed to understand you so deeply could walk into a different future without ever saying what you meant. Don't scroll, because they may finally be admitting that the feelings were there. They simply did not know how to build a life around them at the time. Listen carefully, because this is where their spiritual awakening becomes less romantic and more honest. They are beginning to understand that a powerful connection does not excuse secrecy, betrayal, or emotional triangles. If they are married, they have responsibilities they cannot pretend do not exist. My beloved child, this message is not asking you to become the person they hide with when life gets difficult. If their marriage has real problems, those problems must be faced honestly within that marriage. You should not become an escape route. You deserve a love that can choose you openly, not one that only speaks to you in shadows. Don't scroll, because your soulmate may actually acknowledge this boundary in the letter. They may write, I am not asking you to wait. I am not asking you to become a secret. I just needed you to know the truth. That distinction matters. My beloved child, sometimes a confession is not a proposal for what comes next. Sometimes it is an attempt to repair what someone failed to say before. Maybe they want to give you back a piece of your own history, the knowledge that your intuition was not entirely wrong, that the emotional depth you felt was not one-sided. Wait, because something about 222 may feel meaningful during this chapter. Let it remind you of balance and two people having equal access to truth. If 444 appears, remember that love needs a stable foundation. If 555 keeps showing up, perhaps it reflects the fact that your relationship to this old story is changing. And if 111 catches your attention, let it remind you that your future is still yours to create. My beloved child, angel numbers can become moments of reflection, but they should never be used to justify crossing boundaries or waiting indefinitely for someone whose life is already committed elsewhere. Listen to this, because your soulmate may have kept the letter hidden precisely because they feared hurting more people. Maybe they wrote it but never intended to send it. Maybe they folded it away, saved it in a private note, or returned to it only when memories became too strong. Don't scroll, because writing can become a way of telling the truth without acting impulsively. Perhaps they needed somewhere to put the feelings they could not ethically place in your hands at that moment. But eventually, something made them reconsider whether you deserved to know at least part of what had always remained unsaid. Your heart needs this right now, because you are allowed to receive truth without accepting responsibility for what they do next. My beloved child, if you ever hear their confession, you do not need to decide their marriage for them. You do not need to tell them whether to stay or leave. That decision belongs to them and should be based on the reality of their marriage, not simply on memories of you. Your role is to decide what protects your own peace and integrity. Don't look away, because your soulmate may admit that they once compared their present life with the future they imagined with you. Maybe they wondered whether conversations would have felt different. Maybe they pictured the ordinary routines you might have shared. But listen closely. Imagined futures are always easier than real ones because imagination does not include bills, stress, conflict, or ordinary imperfections. My beloved child, they may be learning this too. The question is not whether the imaginary life with you looked beautiful. The deeper question is why they still feel unresolved about how the two of you ended. Pause here, because there may have been one day when that unresolved feeling became impossible to ignore. Maybe they found an old message from you. Maybe they came across a photograph. Maybe someone casually asked whether they had ever loved someone they could not forget. Don't scroll, because your soulmate's reaction may have surprised even them. They did not have to think. Your memory came forward immediately. That was when they understood that hiding the past had not healed it. Stay with this message, because the letter may contain a confession about jealousy too, but not the possessive kind. They may admit that imagining you happy with someone else brought a complicated sadness. My beloved child, not because they believe you belong to them, but because they know someone else may receive the version of you they were too afraid to choose. Someone else may get your loyalty without doubting it. Someone else may get your openness without making you prove it. That realization can make regret feel very real. Your heart needs this right now, because their regret is not your obligation. Don't scroll past this. You do not owe someone access simply because they finally understand your value. My beloved child, if you have built peace, love, or a new life, you are allowed to protect it. Their letter may validate the past, but it does not get to command your future. Listen carefully, because your soulmate may be struggling with one of the hardest truths of all. Maybe they waited so long that telling you now feels selfish. They ask themselves, would this help them heal, or would it reopen something they worked hard to close? My beloved child, that question matters. A confession should not be sent only because the sender wants relief. If they genuinely care about you, they also have to consider what the truth might do to your emotional life. Don't scroll, because this may be why the letter was written so carefully. Perhaps there are no demands. No promises of leaving. No pressure. Just truth, apology, and acknowledgement. They may say, you deserve to know that I remembered. You deserve to know that you mattered. You deserve to know that my silence was not the same as indifference. Listen to this. Sometimes those words are not meant to restart the story. They are meant to finally close the gap between what happened and what you believed happened. Wait, because there is one line that may reveal how much their perspective has changed. I used to think choosing the safer path meant choosing the right path. My beloved child, that sentence carries a lesson they may have spent years learning. Safety can be valuable, but fear can disguise itself as wisdom. They may have chosen what looked stable because your connection felt emotionally powerful and unpredictable. Now they realize the real issue may have been their inability to communicate through uncertainty. Your heart needs this right now, because you may have grown through the opposite lesson. Maybe you once believed intensity itself proved destiny. Now you know something deeper: peace matters too. Consistency matters. Availability matters. My beloved child, a connection can feel spiritually significant and still require healthy boundaries. That is part of awakening, not simply believing every powerful emotion must become a relationship. Don't look away, because your soulmate may also confess that they occasionally wondered whether you hated them. They imagined that you looked at their marriage and assumed they had lied about every feeling before it. Maybe they feared you saw them as someone who used you emotionally and then disappeared. Listen closely. The letter may be their attempt to say, I understand why you might think that, but the truth is I was confused, afraid, and not brave enough to handle the situation honestly. Pause here, because explanation is not the same as excuse. My beloved child, you can understand why someone was afraid and still acknowledge that their choices hurt you. You can hold compassion without rewriting your own experience. Don't scroll, because this is especially important when spiritual language is involved. Divine timing should never become a way to erase accountability. If they made choices that caused pain, those choices still deserve honest recognition. Listen to this, because your soulmate may be thinking about what they would say if you responded to the letter. Perhaps they hope for forgiveness more than reunion. Maybe they want to know you do not carry hatred. Maybe they want to hear that you are happy. My beloved child, that may hurt them and comfort them at the same time. Love sometimes reaches a mature place where someone would rather know you are genuinely loved elsewhere than know you spent years waiting for something they could not offer. Don't scroll, because the most revealing part of the letter may be where they write, I hope whoever loves you now understands what they have. That line contains surrender. It acknowledges that your life belongs to you. It admits that they no longer have the right to assume you are emotionally available. And my beloved child, if that is truly where their heart is, the letter may be less about pulling you backward and more about finally honoring your worth. Your heart needs this right now, because you may have once prayed for this exact confession. You may have imagined how healing it would feel to hear them say you mattered. But now that the possibility exists, you may realize something surprising: you do not need it as desperately as you once did. That is growth. You may still feel emotion, but your identity is no longer hanging from whether they confirm the past. Stay with this message, because your soulmate may sense that you have changed too. They may wonder whether the version of you who once waited is gone. Maybe they are afraid the letter will arrive too late. Don't look away, because that fear may be part of why they hesitated to send it. They know timing matters. They know truth delayed can still carry consequences. Listen carefully, because there is one secret in the letter they may have never shared with their spouse, their friends, or anyone else. Before the marriage, they may have had a dream, an intuition, or a private moment where they imagined walking away from everything and coming to you. They did not do it. They chose the path already in motion. My beloved child, that does not mean they should have abandoned every responsibility impulsively. It means the emotional conflict was deeper than anyone around them understood. Don't scroll, because something after the wedding may have brought that hidden conflict back. Perhaps someone mentioned you unexpectedly. Maybe they heard you were doing well. Maybe they discovered you had stopped waiting. And for the first time, they realized that the door in their imagination might actually be closing. That realization could be what made them return to the old letter and begin writing again. Your heart needs this right now, because a closed door is not always a tragedy. Sometimes it is a boundary that allows people to move forward with integrity. My beloved child, if your soulmate remains married, the healthiest expression of unresolved love may ultimately be acceptance. They can acknowledge what you meant without asking you to participate in emotional secrecy. Wait, because there may be another twist inside the letter. Your soulmate could admit that they once tried to write a goodbye to you instead. They wanted to say, "I need to let this go." But every time they wrote it, the words felt dishonest because they were not actually ready to release the emotional meaning of the connection. Don't scroll. Eventually they may have realized they did not need to erase you to move forward. They needed to accept that you were part of their story without allowing that story to control every future choice. Listen closely, because that lesson may belong to you too. You do not have to pretend someone never mattered in order to move on. You can honor what was real and still choose what is healthy now. My beloved child, healing is not amnesia. It is being able to remember without being ruled by the memory. Don't look away, because your soulmate may have ended one version of the letter with a sentence they later removed: "In another life, I would have chosen you." Perhaps they deleted it because they realized you live in this life, not another one. Your heart needs this right now. Romantic ideas can be beautiful, but the choices people make in the life they are actually living are what shape reality. Pause here, because that may be the greatest spiritual lesson hidden inside this whole situation. Destiny is not only about whom you feel connected to. It is also about integrity, timing, courage, and how you treat people when life becomes complicated. My beloved child, you deserve a love that does not ask you to live inside a hidden fantasy. Don't scroll, because there is still one unanswered question about the secret letter. Did they actually send it themselves, or did someone else discover it first? Something about how the letter reached you may not be what you think. Maybe it was left somewhere intentionally. Maybe it was almost sent and then pulled back. Maybe another person became aware that it existed. And that discovery may have created consequences your soulmate did not expect. Listen to this final revelation carefully, because the next part may change the meaning of the letter again. Someone close to your soulmate may have found out they were still writing about you and asked them a question that forced them to confront their present life. Are you writing this because you want closure, or because you are secretly hoping they will ask you to come back? My beloved child, your soulmate did not have an easy answer. And until they answer that question honestly, they know they cannot responsibly ask anything from you. But there is one sentence they wrote immediately after being confronted, a sentence about their marriage, their unresolved feelings, and the real reason they finally allowed the letter to leave their hands, and that truth may be the most difficult one of all.